As we enter the final quarter of the season, there are still 22 teams within 2 games of a playoff spot, and not one team has clinched. Not only will we give you in-depth analysis on every key game for Week 14 in the NFL with the latest trends, injury updates, odds, and picks, but we'll also examine the latest Super Bowl futures and division races as OFN NFL Preview with Tony Mejia on the Ourlads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in to the Ourlads Football Network NFL Preview for Week 14 in the NFL with Tony Mejia, independent sports columnist and exclusive handicapper at VegasInsider.com for this Thursday, the 7th of December, 2017. So, Tony, don't you find it interesting, and this happens a lot, as soon as you kind of give up on a team, they play their best football game of the season. And this is why I really love futures more than, especially during the shows and the season and the reports than giving like season long predictions, because of stuff like this with the Seattle Seahawks. I hadn't taken Seattle at all this season for futures. You finally give up on them, and 1 week later, that's the only team I think I added this week to my futures report at 12-1 to win the Super Bowl, because I said, well, with that performance, why wouldn't I add them to my futures report? So I guess after you finally gave up on them, are you now thinking twice about that?
Yeah, I'll think twice about it. We have moved on. The point is, though, that you're absolutely right, because you do. Yeah, Oakland fits in this category too, and people that gave up on the Chargers at 0-4. This league is really unpredictable, and most leagues are, but this one in particular because of injuries and the fact that one key cog being missing. And for fans that don't follow it as closely, it could be on the offensive line and be the most important thing. It just changes everything, and so how volatile it is really dictates, and that's why you like features and I really don't. I'm down with setting an early pick if I really like it, and then letting it ride. But as far as the week to week, not a big fan.
Yeah, and look, for the other thing too is, when you're forecasting a whole season, what we talk about an awful lot, or all like first couple months of the season, is it's just too early. And this is why, because it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes until December before some of these teams, thanks to the limited practices during the offseason, the free agency moves, the injuries, the schedules, it's just an awful lot. Sure, you could always go Patriots, and the usual suspects, as long as they have the great quarterbacks. But just about every other team, you just can't. It's like right now with the Eagles. They say with both teams, really. Well, if Seattle loses this week, then it was just a one good week. If Philly loses this week again, now all of a sudden you start to go, uh-oh, because it's time for them to start actually getting better, and now they've lost a couple of games turning into December. So it shows you that there's still a long way to go.
Yeah, no question. We'll see how Carson Wentz bounces back. That was a rough night for him, and he still put through a prolific passing game and made some plays that just made your jaw drop. So, the talent's there, and his holdup will always be consistency, at least early on in his career. I think adversity is a good thing for them. When we talked about that game, I said I like the Seahawks, ended up winning with the Seahawks. But as far as Philly in that angle was concerned, I wanted to see them play bully. I wanted to see them step on a former champion's throat and maybe grow from there confidence-wise. Didn't happen, but now you get to see how resilient they are.
Yeah, and also I think part of it too is the coaching and the strategy, and it was like, why did you guys wait so long to throw the football? This is a great defensive run team, Seattle. Why waste your time? You're just wasting your time running the ball when really the strength of your team is your passing game. look, you have a good running attack too, but the strength of the team is the passing team because of Carson Wentz. It's the NFL. That's the way it is nowadays. They're not the Dallas Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott. So that was just and then you had a question whether or not you thought that Doug Peterson uh, made the wrong decision with the decision. Both times he decides to throw the red flag out, which no coach should ever throw the red flag out unless it's like the biggest play of the game, fourth quarter, and you really have to decide. And you see it's so blatant as far as where the officials measured the ball was spotted wrong, and I've seen officials this year spot balls completely wrong many times. But when it's too early in the game to be throwing the red flag for that, and then I think maybe he didn't want to risk it again in the second half when he really should have risked it, which really changed the whole game because if they actually throw the red flag on that play with Russell Wilson going behind the line of scrimmage, who knows? That completely could have changed the whole game. So these are the things, though.
And it was a forward pass. With the naked eye, it looked like it was legit, but he certainly threw it forward. So he would have won the challenge. That was the most puzzling thing. Greg, though, it's amazing to me because this is still a young team that you're trying to take seriously as a true contender. Hey, my Super Bowl champ at the moment. How they were a Carson Wentz fumble at the goal line away from completely changing this game, as well as Seattle played at home.
Yep.
So I mean, the talent's there, and it's just a loss that I think they can grow from.
Well, that's
but it's certainly not an easy bounce back.
That's what we said.
Opportunity this week. We'll have to earn it.
That's why this week's game really, I think, is very important for them to kind of get going again. Before we get into that game, let's talk about the first game on our schedule, and that is going to be, which is always the first game on our schedule, the Thursday night game, and it happens to be a very important game between the Saints and Atlanta in the NFC South. And Atlanta last week, I think they once again proved, at least for me, that they just aren't back yet. I don't know. Again, I don't know if I want to blame everything on Sarkisian anymore. He's definitely a big problem. But the team in general there's just something missing. And I think we saw that last week. Look, Minnesota's got really good defense. There ain't no question about that. But that offense that Atlanta had last year would never have been shut down by even Minnesota on Sunday. So there's just something that's just not clicking right there. And now they got to play a Saint team who rebounded nicely with a big win last week over a very solid Carolina team, another South Division team. And the Saints are going in this game feeling pretty good about themselves. Now for Atlanta, they will be playing all 4 of their remaining games against South Division teams. 2 of the next 3 games will be Atlanta and New Orleans. So that makes it very interesting. This is only I believe, actually, because I think the most recent line I saw was a pick'em. So I'm not sure. Of course, we have no idea what the line will be by. I don't know. What do you think the line will be by game time?
Well, right. I don't know by game time. Right now, it moved significantly to Atlanta -2.5. So
really,
and there's been a swing on this one. From it almost seems like they're playing catch up because we opened at Atlanta -1 when the early line was dropped at the Westgate. Then it opened at 1.5. Some got up to 2. A bookmaker, Scott Cooley informed us that it went from the Falcons laying 2 to the Saints laying 2, then settled back at a pick'em. And now again, you got Atlanta that, when I went to bet after writing the preview, early dawn, was still a pick'em. At one point, at some spots, you could get a point with the Saints. At others, you could get a point with the Falcons.
Okay. So
it was wild. And then now it definitely has settled in to, and I have a live odds, so I can tell you to the second what it is right now. It is Atlanta laying 2.5 pretty much everywhere. Westgate, the Wynn, offshores. And the only place it's available laying 2 is at William Hill spot on the Strip. So, right now it's pretty steady that the Falcons are going to lay 2.5.
Well, look, 3 points. I'd take that. I don't think it's going to matter much. Pick them to 3 anyway, but you never know. Look, you know which way I'm going. I've been going with the Saints for a long time this season. I'm not going to stop now. I still think they're better than Atlanta. National TV, big opportunity for the Saints to prove to everybody that they're the better team. If Atlanta wins this game, it'll probably be their either their best or their second best win of the year. They have to play the way that they did against Seattle to win this football game, and if they don't, they're going to lose this football game. By the way, and this I'm kind of glad now that Atlanta's the favorite because the dog has won 5 out of the last 7 in this series, and the dog has covered 7 straight in this series. So easy for me to take the Saints and to grab and run with that trend.
We'll see. I mean, Andrews Pete missing from the offensive line. He hadn't missed a snap in the last game, and he's really been a key for that offensive line. Terran Armstead, who he's helped replace, now comes back to the lineup and has to reciprocate. So that's interesting from New Orleans standpoint. Marshawn Lattimore will play after missing 2 games with the ankle. He's obviously their best defensive back. Crawley came back last week. Marcus Williams, the safety who missed last week's games, also going to play. So, the Saints are relatively back at full strength. Maybe the line dropped because Mark Ingram popped up as questionable because of a toe thing. He's expected to play. We'll see if that limits him. Falcons get back Desmond Trufant from a concussion, but lose Andy Levitre, who hasn't missed a snap all year. So they could have issues on their offensive line. And to me, I think it comes down to a Falcons defense that really hasn't played very well this season. They've looked average, finding a way to contain the Saints without Drew Brees helping because he really has limited turnovers. Stat for you that you'd like, 16 touchdowns to no interceptions in Matt Ryan's career on Thursday night.
Okay, well, that I won't like. Okay, if I'm taking the Saints.
Because you like the Saints. But you'll like the stat. The stat's a good stat.
All right. So, look, I think that...
Yeah, still be a connoisseur of fine stats, even if they...
Sure, absolutely. And look, I do believe that... I got to believe that the main reason that Atlanta is getting the play is just because, look, I still think that there are people who believe in them. And I think that's why they were favored over the Vikings last week. So I just, it's like one of those things. They're still not believing in the Saints. So, for me, it's easier because I've been non-believing in the Falcons for about 6 weeks now, except I did get a little bit, after that Seattle game, but still not fully in. Saints I've believed in all season on, compared to most people. So I can see why I'm different to most people and why the Falcons are almost a 3-point favorite. We'll see if that continues tonight. Big game because Atlanta cannot afford to lose this football game. Because they are sitting right there in a really out situation if they lose this football game. So they're going to be fighting for their lives. Matter of fact, that final game of the regular season will be in Atlanta against Carolina, and that could very well dictate which one of those teams get in. Because at this point, I kind of doubt both teams get in.
Right, and these two teams play again in 2 weeks.
All right, Philadelphia and the Rams. This is our top game of Sunday, and why not? Philadelphia again coming off the loss. Both teams combined 19 wins. We get the Wentz-Goff matchup. This is great for the NFL that they were both the top quarterbacks last season, and already they are pretty much at the top of the charts as far as top young quarterbacks in the NFL. Eagles had their 9-game win streak snapped, so that's why this is important for them to rebound right after that. Not to say that they're not making the playoffs, but or even winning the division, which by the way they will if they win the game.
Yeah, they're winning the division.
Yeah, so that has nothing to do with it. It's just all about whether or not they truly have what it takes to go far into the playoffs. Aguilar returns to California, USC, site of where he used to play his college games. Of course, he's having a fantastic season. The Rams have won 6 out of 7 straight up and against the spread. I no doubt this is the Rams' best win if they can get it. Keep in mind, I still would like to. This would be though without. I mean, see, to me, this is not even close to being the best win because they beat Jacksonville on the road, and all right, early on in the season, no big deal. And then when they beat the Saints a couple weeks ago, the Saints were coming off some major injuries. So this is really. I know a lot of people have said, "Oh, Saints they finally had a big win, or they finally proved to everybody." We said what after the first month of the season that we both bought into the Rams. So we don't need to see the Rams win this game to know that they have arrived. It's just a matter of how much have they arrived, and that's what we need to see on Sunday.
I mean, I guess to me, it's an interesting measuring stick to see where these teams are right now, and then however the game unfolds is what they'll have to deal with going forward, because they're both playoff teams and they're both young playoff teams that haven't proven that they know what they're doing on that stage yet. So, from that standpoint, I think it's big. From a standing point, it's about home field for Philly because they're in the race with Minnesota, and I think Philadelphia is a team that would benefit greatly from being at home as opposed to being a 2 seed and having to go somewhere for a potential championship game. So from that standpoint, also means a lot.
And the Rams, the Rams win this game and the Vikings lose, then all of a sudden they're in the picture for home field.
Yeah, they're in the mix.
Yeah. Which is kind of crazy, but it is what it is. And by the way, the 3 Rams losses this year, 2 of them were against the 2 best teams that they played, Minnesota and Seattle. That's why, as I say, they've had nice wins. We believed in them pretty much all season. But I don't know if they can win this game with the Eagles coming off the loss. So I like the Eagles. I like the fact that the Eagles are getting close to 3 points here. So I'm going to take those 3 points and say it was just a minor hiccup for the Eagles, and the loss sometimes when you're a really good team and you've had a long run of winning, sometimes you need a wake up call. And I'm gonna hey, just like the Saints, I've gone with the Eagles pretty much all season. I'm not going to stop doing it right now. Next up.
Well, from an information standpoint on that game, the Philly stayed over this week, so never made it back to the East Coast, which I like as a move.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how you feel about that.
No, it's okay. Yeah.
Why not? LA's got its issues going on, but they've been able to practice and whatnot. So like the move for them there, but definitely need to monitor Zach Ertz's status given the concussion. Obviously, not having him would affect what Philly wants to do in the passing game. I think it affected what they wanted to do in Seattle.
Yeah, they definitely would need to run the ball a little bit more this week than last week against Seattle. By the way, next week, huge game for the Rams. Rams will be in Seattle next week, so that's going to be a really big game. Maybe even the biggest game of the week next week when we open the show. All right. Speaking of big games, and there's a lot of so far this season, and I'm not really sure we're going to be able to say this from now on, because now we're into week 14. All these games are going to be so big, or a lot of the games you get these really nice matchups. But there's more really good matchups this week than I think we've seen all season. I mean, especially at 4:00. Usually you get like 1 or 2 4:00 games. They've just pounded the 4:00 schedule. There's like 3 or 4 good games at 4:00 on Sunday compared to 1:00 where there might be like a 1:00 game. It's like you got to wait for the 4:00 games to actually get excited. But this is the one really good 1:00 game, or one of the really good 1:00 games. I think this might be the best of them all. Minnesota and Carolina. And Minnesota is about a 2.5 point favorite against Carolina. As well they should be, showing a little bit of respect finally for Minnesota being the favorite here. Of course, Carolina didn't give Vegas any favors, believing in them in the way they played last week against the Saints. Maybe we weren't surprised about that. We talked about how Cam Newton didn't play well against the Jets, so that kind of carried over a little bit. Carolina was sloppy again. Carolina, though, they're in a good situation coming up with their schedule. This is one of 3 straight home games before they end the season in Atlanta. They get Green Bay next week with Aaron Rodgers returning, which could be a tremendous game, and then Tampa Bay after that. So if they can kickstart things with a big win here against the toughest team that they're playing in that 3-week stretch, that can go a long way towards putting Carolina in the catbird seat for the postseason. But they're facing a Viking team that has won 8 straight. They've covered 7 straight. I've picked them now, I think, 3 or 4 straight weeks in a row, and I'm just going to keep staying with Minnesota until they lose, because they're playing some really good football.
Yeah, lights out defensively, and it's a trend that we've seen all season, so it's not like it's anything new. I think the only game where they looked off was the Pittsburgh game, and everything was thrown off there because of the unexpected Bradford injury. I think it affected defense too. They're basically the only team that shut down the Saints that have held them under 20, and they did a good job on Kamara. I was doing figures for that, and Kamara's had 2 bad games the first 2, and Minnesota was obviously the first one. So this is a defense that's not anything to write off as a fluke. I mean, it's doing it all year long, and I think it'll continue to. But I am interested in seeing how Cam Newton dissects them and works against them. Obviously, he's moving his feet more, and it seems like he's been taking it easy in practice. Missing some to make sure his body is right. So, I think if he's healthy, it'll be interesting to see how the Panthers match up.
And he's supposed to, looks like, maybe get both Greg Olsen and Ryan Khalil back. So
right, yep. Olsen came in and out, and now is fully cleared without a pitch count, according to Rivera. So he's good to go. I think Khalil is, he's already made it back somewhat. And now they expect him to be closer to 100%. So yeah, again, this is a great spot for to see how seriously we could take Carolina going forward.
Yeah, because look, and seriously, it is because they've already had some nice wins this season, and this would be one of the biggest wins they've had to prove to everybody that if they do get to the postseason, they're going to be very dangerous. They've only been a home dog once this year, and they beat the Falcons as that home dog. Don't forget they went to New England and won, even though the Patriots were a different team, but that's still a solid win. And who knows? Maybe Minnesota gets their Seattle this week, because when you've won 8 straight like the Vikings have, sooner or later you're going to have a week where things don't go your way. And maybe this is the week, even though Minnesota has been a little bit more battle tested and also a little bit more overlooked than the Eagles. Eagles have been killing teams, not playing the best teams during the stretch. So you can understand what the Eagles might have had a hiccup game. So I'm not thinking the Vikings necessarily would have that type of game. Just the fact that, hey, again, you win 8 straight and then you go on the road, play a desperate Carolina team. That's not an easy task, especially when you're finally being recognized as a 3-point road favorite. And if they win the game, they win the North. So, which they're going to do anyway. So it just depends on when they do it. All right. Next up is, here's a big one. Seattle and Jacksonville, one of these late games on Sunday. And both teams are 8-4. Again, Seattle's got the big game next week with the Rams, so they can't afford to lose this one. After beating the Eagles, if they lose this game and then they got the Rams, and if they were to lose that one, then they might be on the outside looking in again. And the Jags have won 5 out of 6. But we all know how big this is for the Jags to show everybody just how good they are. I've been behind them since taking them to beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh a couple of months ago. So I've taken them a lot in the last couple of months, but I cannot take them here. I am not going to look at that Seattle game last week as just a game. I saw Seattle from the very beginning of that game. There's only one other time that I saw Seattle play like that this season, even though and offensively, and that was the Houston game, where it looked like Seattle was as good as I've seen them look. Seattle, Russell Wilson, they looked tuned in. They looked serious. They looked on top of their game from the very beginning of the game. And you know what? We talked about it last week. They have been the best team over the last 5 years in December. They get off to another good start in December. I'm sorry, but I don't know whether or not this is necessary. I'm not going to say this is an easy game, but for me, it's an easy game for me to take Seattle and 3 points. So I'm not saying this is an easy game. It's just an easy game for me to take the 3 points, to know that all I have to do is beat the Jags, to know that even if I were to lose a close game by a point or two, I might be able to get lucky there. This might actually be the one game all week long that I would take.
So is your favorite game?
This is my favorite game. Taking Seattle, correct.
I mean, there's risk. Obviously, after an emotional game, you play Sunday night, and then you have to fly cross country and prepare for the most physical defense in the league. So we'll see if they get a break. Is Jalen Ramsey's hamstring too much of a problem for him to go? That obviously would be a huge boost. I think what we saw from the Seahawks, we saw coming. When we were talking about Darrell Bevell and the way the philosophy had to change because the defense wasn't going to hold up against Philadelphia. We saw from the get-go that they agreed and were very aggressive offensively, as they should be. In this game, this is a different spot because you go back to riding your defense against Blake Bortles, and you obviously you're going to pressure. You have to stop the run, and are they going to be too conservative, which we've seen from Pete Carroll on the road years on end? I like the under in this game. a ton. I think that's going to be my favorite total play of the week. But as far as who wins, it's to me it's up in the air because Bortles has had some moments where he moves the ball. He might be without Marquise Lee though. So if his security blanket isn't there, he'll be using his tight ends most of the day. Be very predictable, and then I like my under even more. But again, probably one I'm going to stay away from.
What is the number?
And if I do move on it, I go Seattle.
What's the number?
On the total, I think it's 40.
Yeah, that's 40 anything is pretty big for Jacksonville in this game, and even with their defense. Because
39.
I can't expect.
No, it's 39 and it's now moved to 40. So
40 anything for me because look, here's the other thing, matchup. Because the Jags have to run the football, and Seattle is not going to let them run the football. And so the Jags to win this game, Bortles is going to have one of his best games of the season. There is just no doubt about that. They cannot beat Seattle without Bortles having a good game. The other thing is, which is just natural, is their defense is going to have to destroy Seattle's offensive line, and they're going to have to force Russell Wilson into turnovers. We've seen that happen on the road before with him. We know it's possible. That's probably even part of the reason they're a dog here. Is Vegas has seen it as well. So it can happen. But I just, again, after what I saw last week and knowing what a superstar and winner Russell Wilson is, knowing how important this game is at this time of the season and how well he plays at this time of the season, and the fact that I've got a decision to make on whether or not I go with Russell Wilson or Blake Bortles, I mean, come on. So,
and they're giving you points.
And I'm getting points. And I'm getting points.
Beware what the devil gives you.
But keep in mind too, I think what you said though in the very beginning is probably why they're getting points. I don't think that's why I said That's why I said I don't think this is an easy game. I just think it's an easy game for me to take. So if they lose, I'm not going to go, I can't believe they lost, because again, I respect what the Jags are doing here. But I cannot not take this game. I just can't. So
yeah, from a philosophical standpoint, it's one that you live with because you would have never done anything different.
Correct. All right. Now the Sunday night game is also a big one, and no surprise to anybody on this network about which way I'm going here. Since the Ravens have been my sleeper since the beginning of the season, and they're finally starting to play like it. I know you haven't bought in yet. I'm not sure if you have yet. Maybe you need this win in order to actually fill it in. I know they've won ugly at times, but they're starting to move the ball a little bit better, just a little bit better. Of course, Collins is starting to get a little bit more confidence every game he plays. The health issue is no coincidence. Even though Macklin is still dealing with a back injury, we're not sure if he's going to play, so check practice tomorrow. If he practices, he'll probably play. If he doesn't, he won't. But getting him back was also important along with Wallace and the defense. The defense has been very opportunistic. And you know what? Pittsburgh sure looked pretty sloppy on Monday night against the Bengals. They won that game for one reason and one reason only. The Bengals just can't beat the Steelers. So that's a whole psychological deal. Pittsburgh hasn't necessarily played all that great lately. They barely beat the Bengals. They barely beat the Packers, a team. That was Hundley's best game, and he hasn't really looked good in any other game except the Pittsburgh game. So I think, again, 7 straight wins. Maybe Pittsburgh's due. Baltimore has played very well in Pittsburgh recently. They've won 2 out of 3. We of course, I remember very, very much like they do that win, that loss last year in Pittsburgh. With 9 seconds left because they were having the same kind of season, and if they would have won that game, then they would have controlled the destiny of the AFC North the very next week in a game. I think it was against the Bengals at home, and the Bengals were crap at that point, which meant that the Ravens were actually going to steal the division. And then with 9 seconds left, the Steelers not only canceled that, but eliminated the Ravens. So this is a great rivalry, and I just love the fact that I'm gonna just go ahead and take the Ravens at 2-1 on the money line and call this my my upset of the week.
There's lots of factors in your favor, specifically Pittsburgh and their emotional,
Yes,
state.
That's true. Yes,
coming off a Monday night, losing a teammate, Matakevich, Ryan Shazier's backup, who came in, hurt his shoulder. We don't know about him. Mike Mitchell should play through the ankle, but you've got a beat-up defense. You've got suspended Juju Smith-Schuster. And again, the short week after an emotional win that became secondary as soon as the zeros went on the clock. So and to me that would add to the Ravens' potential of getting into the
Absolutely.
playoffs, but it would not add to my respect for them because to me they did what they needed to do in Green Bay against Hundley. He was overmatched. Houston, they took advantage of again a team that's been decimated by injuries, and the Lions they destroyed. A Matthew Stafford finally knocked him out, but he came in wounded as it is. Pittsburgh, it would be a big win. But again, I'll be saying this after they beat Cleveland next week if they're on a 5-game winning streak. That I need to see what they do in Indianapolis. But certainly, you're looking good, and things are turning up. Fortunate for a team that quite frankly needed some good luck given their injuries in preseason that almost didn't give them a chance in the first place. So maybe it's karma rectifying itself. But to me, they've done what they needed to do, but not too impressive to me just yet. I mean, Flacco still he's been better of late, but again, just too many times I've seen him just go into a shell.
No, look, I agree. It's not even about necessarily them as a true Super Bowl sleeper. It's more of just getting to the playoffs. If you're going to go in feeling good about yourself, winning games, beating the Steelers and all that, okay. But there's no doubt in my mind either that I won't even feel good about them making a deep run unless I do see something more. I must see something more out of Flacco. I must, because I know he can get hot. I've seen it. We've all seen it. Not just when he won the Super Bowl, but we've seen it other years as well. When they've come up short, we've seen it. We saw it in the game last year against the Steelers. So I haven't seen that yet, and so that's the missing ingredient is to see Flacco playing at his best. If he can do that at any point before the playoffs begin, then I'll truly believe that they have a shot to go far. But playoffs are one thing, Super Bowl is another.
Yeah, not to sound like a Raven hater, because there have been strikes against him. And if Flacco gets back Campanaro, who's back now, and Perryman comes back, and they get some, we're going into the Colts game, having shown me something offensively that I seem like I can depend on, then I'd buy in because the defense is going to be there. But they did lose Jimmy Smith, which is a huge blow to that secondary.
Yeah, so they wouldn't get him back, I guess, until when? The playoffs? Is that what it is? I guess 4 games,
at
right?
At the earliest, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, no question. Jimmy Smith is a big player for their team. So we'll see exactly how that's going to hurt him, especially with Antonio Brown this week. No doubt that is the one edge. But, hey, the schedule does if they're able to beat Pittsburgh, the schedule is very kind for the Ravens. You would think that's automatic that they'd get to the postseason. But they got to beat Pittsburgh first. All right. Next up is another really good game. Good game at 1 o'clock. I think this is only the second good game at 2, but with the Minnesota Carolina game, that's Oakland and Kansas City, and that's pretty much because the AFC West has been pretty weak thanks to the Chiefs, and they're losing 6 out of their last 7. So the Chiefs are a 4-point favorite here over the Raiders. Amari Cooper, we don't know. We have no idea if he's going to return. Kind of getting the suspicion he will, but we don't know. And if he does, really, at the way that he's played this year, and he's not going to be 100%, will it really matter? The Chiefs have suspended Marcus Peters, so that's significant because Steve Nelson's terrible, as we saw last week against the Jets. Gaines and Mitchell are pretty bad as well. So you take out Peters, and that secondary is a disgrace. So if they can get Cooper back along with Crabtree, then that could be a big edge, of course, for the Raiders, who beat the Chiefs in that exciting Thursday night game, which we thought was going to turn the Raiders' season around. And even though they're 6-6 now, they've been very fortunate to beat Denver and the Giants the last 2 weeks by 7 points. They beat the Dolphins by 3, and then that Chief win by 1. Those are the last 4 wins. So it's not like they've been gangbusters. Remember I said that I think it was going to take when the Chiefs turned things around, and I still believe that they would, and I still do, that it was going to be baby steps. And I saw the baby steps last week because what I saw was the offense. I saw I have been waiting for Alex Smith to throw a deep ball to Tyreek Hill for over 6 weeks, and I said that on the air. And he finally did it a couple of times. What is he waiting for to do that? I don't understand it. Tyreek Hill can beat anybody in a sprint. So he's
Andy Reid handed over play calling, so that was part of it. I mean, I think Reid has been detrimental during the streak, the losing streak.
There you go.
I don't know what happened from the standpoint where we started and everybody was raving about Alex Smith till that lull. That, I mean, it just seemed like everything was awfully conservative and they were scared of their own shadow. So again, no idea what happened there. Maybe it was an injury we didn't know about. But the bottom line is that yeah, great sign on that. You know, it'll be interesting to see if the Raiders, the receivers can hang on to the ball. If Cooper plays, obviously, we'll know more about that if he practices later today. And yeah, if they do, they should have a field day against that secondary.
Yeah, we're probably looking at a high scoring game. That's probably what we're looking at. But I think I saw enough of the baby steps last week to lead me to believe that the Chiefs will win this week. I'll take the Chiefs. I'll give the 4 and still believe that they're going to win this division. But I will say this is it. All right. They lose this game, especially with the Chargers coming in next Saturday night. They lose this game. And if the Chargers win, they go down a game in the division. I think they're probably done because they've lost enough. And if they keep losing, that's it. But I believe that they'll win this game and they'll cover because I just am not sold on the Raiders, even though you also have to look at the other flip side and say, you know what, if the Raiders actually win this game, which would be, again, not a great team the way they've been playing the Chiefs, but still, under the situation, if they win this game, it could be really huge for the Raiders as well. Not that nobody's going to think that, you know, they're going to be a contender for the Super Bowl, but just to win this division. So.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the Raiders saved their season against the Chiefs, and now they can truly prolong it with a win here.
All right. By the way, those Saturday games, the Thursday and Saturday games next week, besides that Saturday night game, is absolutely unwatchable. Just, I'm sure everybody, if they don't know by now, the early Saturday game and the Thursday game next week are pitiful. Okay, so let's go to New England and Miami on Monday Night Football. That's right, the Miami Dolphins are on national TV again. So something tells me that the way that they played this year on national TV, as many national televised games that they've gotten, we're not going to see the Dolphins on national TV for 3 years. So anyway, the Patriots are an 11-point favorite here. They'll clinch the East with the Bills lost before this game. Or if the Bills win, they win this game, they win the East. We know they're winning the East anyway. They've won 8 straight. They've covered 6 straight. They've won their last 4 by 18 points or more. I think I've taken New England now maybe 5 or 6 straight games during those 6 games they've covered. So I'm going to continue to do that. Why wouldn't I? The only way that they don't cover this game is if they basically kind of just fall asleep and they get into one of those divisional games where the Dolphins are playing, you know, their asses off, and the Patriots just decide into the last minute of the game to do what the Steelers did to the Bengals and not cover but win. But yeah, I mean, why would I jump off the Patriot streak now? It's not going to happen.
Yeah, they're perfect 6-0 on the road. It's not like they're a bad road team. Yeah, well, I mean, they probably will enjoy a nice night in Miami. Hopefully, it doesn't rain. And if it rains, then I'd worry about laying that big number. Yeah. But it could probably be bigger, which I'm sure has some people fretting about being backdoored 1 by 10. Because I was not blown away by the 11 and a half. I would have thought they'd gone for the full 13, 14.
Yeah, well, you know, and remember, of course, when they played the Dolphins a couple weeks ago, that was that they didn't play all that well. So that game they covered by 1, even though they were favored by 17. But still, that game.
Yeah, Miami's defensive front, they salivate at the thought of getting Brady. That's their first.
And they also and the Dolphins also moved the ball on them in that game. You know, it wasn't like the Patriots dominated the game in any stretch. So. Of course, no Gronk, but that's about it. That's the only advantage that the Dolphins have. All right. By the way, New England at Pittsburgh next week, game of the year, I guess, in the AFC. So measuring stick for the Steelers next week. Will they play
the game then for home field?
Yeah. Will the Steelers play the zone next week? That's what everybody's going to want. Are they going to continue to play the same defense that whenever they play against the Patriots every year and get destroyed? So we'll see. All right, Washington and the Chargers. Chargers favored by 6. As we said, they got the big game at Kansas City next Saturday night. You know, Washington, this is a tricky game because the Redskins have been on the West Coast twice this year, and both times have been their best games. They beat the Rams and Seattle. So they go to the Chargers here in this one. And even though they got blown out by the Cowboys, this team they fight. And I think you could see the way they fight, the fact that they've got the guys like the Trent Williams of the world that won't shut it down. They're banged up. These guys are not 100%. We don't even know if Williams or Moses will play this week, but maybe they do because these guys just keep going out there, including Zach Brown, a lot of guys that are banged up a play. So it shows you that they're fighting, but the Chargers are just playing, good football. And I know what happened with Cleveland last week, but, that was just one of those games that, hey, you know what? You win the game. That's all you care about. The game was over early in the fourth quarter anyway. I tell you what, though, the assistant coach of the year might be Pat Meyer, the offensive line coach for the Chargers. He's a good coach. Not just because he's having a really good season, but he's done a really good job before this with the Bills, and he's doing a tremendous job with this unit because we talked about this for a couple of years about their injury situation. Not only have they, now they have lost a couple of guys, but still, this is not a talented line, and they've given up a league low 13 sacks on the season. So Meyer's doing a very good job. Anthony Lynn did a great job hiring assistant coaches. He's got Meyer, he's got Gus Bradley running the defense. You've got the young corners, Trevor Williams and Desmond King playing well. Verrett got hurt early in the season. The acquisition of Trey Boston, Carolina didn't want him. Boston's having a good season. You know about Ingram. You know about Boza. So it's legit. Do you want to give up 6 points? I don't think it's that much of a big deal.
Well, it's a big deal only because of the reason you mentioned about Washington and their ability to win really anywhere. I mean, they have the Saints down and beat, and they seem to play up to their level of competition. So, if Brown plays, the defense should be solid. That's up in the air, so you've got to know about that. I think Trent Williams is out of the space where you have to worry about him every week. I think he's just going to go and play hurt. He's hurt, but he's playing. So, it seems like they'll have him. But yeah, I've been on the Chargers bandwagon big time, so I've got a decision to make on that. 6 is a lot, but the fact is that you see that with Phillip Rivers settling into a rhythm and Keenan Allen in a rhythm, they finally got all their weapons together. The line's blocking, and it's a team that's not flukish. They're certainly a threat to win the division. I think they will end up winning the AFC West.
All right. Well, this could be tricky. We'll probably see early in the game. That's probably what'll determine it. Are the Redskins going to play sloppy like they did against the Cowboys, like they have before, or is Kirk Cousins going to come out on the first drive and march down the field and score a touchdown? And if that happens, and you take the Chargers and give them the 6, you're in trouble. So. But you never know. It's the NFL. But hey, my advice: if you've taken the Chargers like you have for as long as you have, just stick with them. All right. Next up, let's go to Tennessee and Arizona. This is one of the late games. Not a bad late game either. Arizona, this is it for them. They either go on a run or they're done. But they're banged up. They're a very banged up team. Adrian Peterson, see no reason for him to play this week. They've lost 3 out of 4. They were actually in the game last week, but unfortunately Gabbert had a couple of big mistakes early in the game. Came close to getting him out of it, but Rams just a better team, plain and simple. We remember we talked last week about how Tennessee just keeps winning close games and they can't cover when they're winning these games. And then it took that last touchdown run that actually put them over the top. The freakish touchdown run.
Second time doing that for Derrick Henry.
There you go. So without that,
putting away game.
Yeah, without that, it's another game where Tennessee wins a close game. They win and don't cover. They're 3-5-1 against the spread in their last 9. They should have been 2-6-1 in their last 9 against the spread, even though they've won 6 out of 7. So they're going the exact opposite of what we preached last week. You win and you cover. This is one of those, but it is 3. So it's a low number. I don't know. I'm probably staying away from this game, but I'm sure Tennessee's appetizing.
Yeah, look, Delaney Walker has really stepped it up, and now again he's dealing with an ankle issue that is significant enough for him to have missed practice this week. So hopefully it's just precautionary because he's really been a key. It's night and day when Mariota can get Delaney Walker going, how effective he can be. He's certainly his security blanket. And then, with other dynamic options, now they get Rashard Matthews back, so they're completely at full strength with that receiving core. So this is a good opportunity against the depleted Arizona secondary for Mariota to play well, back out on the West Coast, and then if they march to that meeting with Jacksonville. It's going to decide it all coming up in, what is that, week 16?
Week 17.
Week 17?
Final game of the regular season. And that'll be that game is going to be in Tennessee. And don't forget, Tennessee destroyed Jacksonville in week 2, 37-16. And if Jacksonville loses to Seattle and Tennessee wins their game, then and then don't forget Tennessee goes to San Francisco next week. So I wonder if they stay out on the West Coast while Jacksonville hosts Houston next week. So
all teams should.
Big opportunity for Tennessee to take control of the division, knowing they got that home game at the end of the season to put the Jags away if they need to. But we'll see. We'll see. It's why I'm staying away from this game because I don't know. I still like the Jags to win this division. All right, next up, even though I'm picking Seattle to win the game. All right, so Dallas and the Giants. This is why I like the end of the season stuff and not week to week. All right, Dallas. And
so we know you got Jacksonville in week 17.
There you go. You know that. So. You know that. Yes, unless they fall apart here. Yes. Dallas is a 4.5-point favorite at the Giants, and I'm conflicted in this game. I mean, I can understand why people would jump on the Giants as a 2-1 home dog. With the whole Eli thing, and Eli comes back, and he's going to show them. But then on the flip side, you say, all right, let's just take that emotional, psychobabble out, and we just go with who's a better team and who's also a now healthier team, and that's Dallas. And Dallas gets Sean Lee back, which is huge. Tyron Smith has been back now for a couple of games. Maybe they don't have Scandrick back, but I'd rather much have Lee and Tyron Smith back than Scandrick. So really in this game, it's going to be no Zeke and everybody else is pretty much back. That's a huge break for the Cowboys. So that's why it's one of those games where, I could see why you would want to go either way, but I think, taking the gut, your gut feeling out of the equation, I think the Cowboys are the safer pick.
Yeah, certainly. And I think obviously everybody knows the impact that Sean Lee has on that defense. So, how does Eli respond? Does he completely put all the air out of the bubble with an early interception, or does he actually play well, lead them on a drive, and make it a 4-quarter game? Because if it's a 4-quarter game, then the Giants could absolutely steal it.
Yeah.
Because you have guys that haven't been engaged in months, for whatever reason, just demoralized by McAdoo and the impact of a team that so early in the season realized that they weren't going anywhere. So if they're engaged, I think they're in this game, and you need your weapons. So Sterling Shepard has to play through a hamstring for Eli. We'll see if he's going to play. Justin Pugh might return. We'll see if he's going to block. And defensively, Giants need Goodson and Eli Apple, both are questionable.
Yeah, you see, when you're picking the Giants here with that gut feeling to pull off the upset, see if they were like See, if I take Baltimore as a 2-1, well, why wouldn't I do that? When I got a hot Raven team with all the stuff we talked about, sure, it's Pittsburgh they're going up against, but why wouldn't, if I'm taking a 2-1 dog, why wouldn't I take the Ravens? With the Giants, there's just too many things you got to basically hope for. You got to hope, the distractions of the coaching change with Eli coming back, the fact that talent-wise, they just, even if Eli plays well, who's he throwing the ball to? Especially if Shepard doesn't play. So, it would have to be one of Eli's greatest games if he throws for 300 yards.
And it's on Eli, which is funny because Spagnuolo, he's still going to, yes, he's the interim head coach, but he's still going to be, tunnel vision on the defensive end. So essentially they're obviously going to have a coordinator and a play caller, but then you're basically saying, all right, Eli, what do you see? And it's your show.
That's true.
So all on Eli and the defense to be healthy, but I don't automatically dismiss it. And maybe that's just because of the expectation that the team won't come out flat. Because if there had been no benching, I think I'd say eyes closed, Dallas wins this by 10.
All right, Jets, the other New York team that still has a shot because the AFC is a lot more wide open with that 5-7 record, and the fact that the Jets are playing a Denver team that is just pathetic. Denver has lost 8 straight games straight up and against the spread. But keep in mind, the Jets' only second road game since October 22nd. That road game was the worst game they played all year against the pathetic Bucks. So Jets are basically a 1-point favorite Who knows if it'll be pick 'em by game time, whatever. Jets were a 1-point road favorite only one time this season, and that was the game that they beat Cleveland. That was pretty ugly. Now, Josh McCown's coming off a great game, probably the best game of his entire career. Denver is just awful. That's it. They're just awful. So this would actually be a worse loss for the Jets than the Tampa Bay loss. That's how bad Denver's playing, because they've been doing it a lot longer than Tampa Bay was doing it. So I mean, I'm willing to give the Jets a mulligan for the Tampa Bay game, but you can't lose two of these games, can you?
You tell me. You follow the Jets a lot closer than I do, and so yeah, you're on Jet duty here, because they're essentially they're telling you, okay, you've seen how bad Denver is. You're going to go to their house in their altitude where they're at least play better and are better acclimated, and we're not giving you any points.
No.
Win or you know,
win or lose. See, it's the reason I can't come in here and say, "Oh, easy pick of the week for me," is because of how they played in Tampa. It's the only reason. Other than that, how do you not, knowing especially how well the Jets have played this year, overachieved in almost every game except the Tampa Bay game? That's the thing. That's the scary proposition. That's it. But yeah, I mean, if they look, bottom line is, if they just play the way that they have played 90% of the games this year, even some of the games they've lost and they've made mistakes, like the Carolina game, even if they play that kind of game, there's no way they lose this game. That's how bad Denver is. Denver's pathetic. I'm telling you, I've said this for 6 weeks? There's no way. There's no way John Elway cannot fire Vance Joseph. There's no way. He's terrible. He made a mistake.
I know there are certainly lots of people in Denver that feel that way. I don't know how I feel about it, just because of how poorly the quarterback play has really brought the team down. I mean, and then yeah, absolutely. If you lose the defense, it's a very similar situation to what happened in New York. And there has been a lack of discipline. I don't know. I'm not close enough to this team to completely come down on Vance Joseph as the fall guy. It seems like a lot of things have gone poorly. This game, I think I would be on the opposite end. I would say, this is a rally the troops game. It seems like Khalib's going to play. The defense will probably show up. But what am I going to get out of Simeon against the Jets defense, where because of the improved secondary play, you kind of have to now respect. And then you add McCown and his solid play. It's not. You can buy the pick'em. It's why it's a pick'em. Just make a decision and knock it out.
By the way, this is the first half of the Thursday night football game that nobody is going to watch. Denver and the Colts. Oh my goodness! So
Peyton Manning Bowl.
Oh my! They might as well have him there. They got to do something to draw the crowd. Oh my goodness! I mean, you talk about, how about a prediction? Vegas should give us odds on whether it would be the worst rated Thursday night game ever. I'd take those odds.
It's not. I have to write the preview. So.
Oh, I feel sorry for you. All right, so maybe you just do a Peyton Manning retrospective. That'll take care of 90% of the article. All right.
I at least have to come up with something. There'll be an angle.
There'll be something. All right. Detroit and Tampa Bay. And by the way, the Saturday game next week, the daytime isn't all that great either, especially if Detroit loses against Tampa Bay. It's Detroit hosting Chicago. But at least if Detroit beats Tampa Bay, it means something. I don't know. Stafford has just been banged up lately. He hasn't even thrown yet this week. So that's why I don't even think there still is a line, right? No line in this game, right?
Let me check it. But as far as Stafford, yeah, I mean, I think it was a swelling issue. So, the fact that he hasn't thrown isn't an alarming concern other than, as far as it being, he's certainly not going to play, but the concern is out there where there is no line. There's also no line in Indianapolis at Buffalo.
Okay. Well, I mean, plus Abdullah may not play again. Swanson missed a game last week. Lang and Wagner, the two best linemen, haven't been practicing this week. They've been hurt. Wagner left the game last week against the Ravens. Ansah hasn't been playing. So it's no wonder that the Lions are playing the way that they're playing. Both teams have lost 2 straight. By the way, Tampa will host Atlanta next week on Monday Night Football. This is only the second home game for the Bucs since playing Carolina in late October. The other home game was the game we just mentioned a couple minutes ago, was when they beat the Jets. All
Yeah,
right.
I would think if Stafford plays, you probably see the Lions a 1 to 2 point favorite.
Yeah, I would. You know what? And I probably would take the Lions. I can't see them losing to Tampa. I mean, I know they haven't been playing that great. I know they got banged up players and stuff, but if Stafford plays, that's good enough for me. I'd probably go with the Lions in that one.
Most people close to the team think will play.
Okay. Packers 3.5 point favorite against the winless Browns. So this is the game of the year for the Packers. Game of the year. Because after beating Tampa Bay last week, when for about a quarter the Packer fans were booing the hell out of Hundley, and they found a way to get in because they ran the ball. Hundley ran it, and then Jones ran it in. It's amazing how bad that offense was looking, and they actually took the opening kickoff in overtime and scored a touchdown. So that was crazy, but they got it done. So they play the winless Browns, who are now they're going to have a new man in charge. They've fired their GM. So that's more distractions for a terrible franchise. But this is it. Game of the year. Hundley's played better on the road. There's that. And if the Packers win this game, by the way, remember I took the Packers last week at 200 to 1. They are now down. Actually, they dropped. Where did they drop to? They dropped pretty significantly, all the way down to 40 to 1, from 200 to 1 with one win. And that's because they get Aaron Rodgers back next week in Carolina if they go 7-6, and plus they're going to need some help, especially Minnesota beating Carolina. So if they can get Minnesota because they're trailing Carolina by 2 games. So if they can get Minnesota to beat Carolina and Green Bay wins this game, then Green Bay could be going into Carolina next week with Aaron Rodgers a game back with a shot to squeak into the postseason.
Yeah, I mean that's what it all hinges on, obviously, and if you can't handle this one, then I think McCarthy should be handed his walking papers at the end of the season.
Yes.
And as far as the Browns, I think this is their best chance to win a game, so they'll be engaged. And again, you got Josh Gordon with a game under his belt. He was targeted heavily. It could have a big one. This is a toss-up to me, and you're obviously seeing the Packers favored because it's the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think this is one of those games where you go, oh, I'm taking the Packers, and how can they not win and cover against the winless Browns? There's no way you can say that. Not with Nick Hundley.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, the Browns actually looked like they had been able to move the ball a little bit better last week. The Packers have a terrible secondary. And you do look at this Gordon kid, and you say to yourself, man, if he does stay clean, he could be a monster. And just imagine they go out and they draft a good quarterback this year and bring in somebody, and then you got Coleman and Gordon moving forward. Now you got Njoku. Now you got the makings of something. So I'm telling you, that's why I said in the beginning. That's why we talked about in the preseason, the beginning of the season. Talent-wise, this team's not that far off. They need a freaking quarterback. That'll win. Like they could have won 6 games this year if they had a quarterback. That's.
No, we've been saying that about them. Well, not the 6 games part, but the quarterback for decades. But certainly, I think they're closer now. And
well, they're going to get one. I mean, come on, they're going to get the first pick, so they're going to get Josh Rosen if they want him. Do they want Rosen? Do they want Darnold? If Darnold comes out, with their luck, they'll draft Rosen, and then he'll be like an injury machine. His entire career. So that's the decision they're going to have to make. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if they went with Darnold because of that. Because I might be, to tell you the truth, even though I think Rosen might be better right now, I might take Darnold just because of that. Because if I'm the Browns and I've been dying for a quarterback for my entire life, I would go with the safer guy. I'd go with Darnold.
Yeah, I see your point there.
Okay, so San Francisco and Houston. Garoppolo played last week and won. That's why I guess they're only a 3-point road dog here. They've won 2 out of 3. Win 3 out of 4? No, I don't think so. Even though Houston's only won once when Watson hasn't started, I'm actually going to take Houston in this game and give the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the early money was on fading Garoppolo from Sharp. So that's what my contact at Bookmaker reported. And to me, Garoppolo looked sharper than I thought he would. They converted way more third downs. Shouldn't have won the game, but Chicago was I think Trubisky had less than 2 yards per completion or per pass attempt or something like that. So
but
and it was my theory of ugly game was blown up a little bit by the lack of wind, because the early forecast called for like 20-mile-an-hour winds, 30-mile-an-hour winds, and it wasn't like that.
It was ugly,
but the under still came in, and yeah, two very poor football teams. So yeah, I mean, I think
Houston's playing hard. Houston's still playing hard.
They're still fighting.
Yeah, and they almost beat a couple of potentially playoff bound teams. We know Tennessee's kind of going, and Baltimore may go, and they almost won those games. So they're fighting. That's
the one caveat, I think, if they let Garoppolo throw a couple deep balls, Marquise Goodwin's actually catching the ball this month. What do we say this year? This month. So potentially they could strike for a couple of deep balls. My fantasy team is actually counting on it.
Ooh,
we'll see.
All right. Oh, you picked him up this week?
You got to pick him up.
Okay.
He's the number one free agent receiver.
Sure,
I would think.
Sure. Yeah.
Going in
I agree.
Week, unless Marquise Lee is out and then Allen Hurns is in.
But again, this just proves, I don't care. This just proves what we were saying for weeks, that Garoppolo could have played. It was all tank nonsense and had nothing to do with him not being ready, nothing to do with anything other than they just felt, oh, let's just keep losing. That's all they cared about.
But they should have done that. And we talked about it when he had it.
But they were lying.
Lost our little thing because I told you that I didn't think he played it.
No, absolutely.
I agree with that philosophy. I do.
And now
don't win if you don't have to.
and that's for Barkley. That's for Saquon Barkley. So they see
right,
what they can do too is, and depending how many more games they win, but what they can do too is, of course, is sit there and no matter, because they're not going to win enough games, but they're definitely going to be in a spot where they're going to be able to say, okay, do we draft Barkley if we can get him, or do we go ahead and be one of these teams that takes a big prize? Because there's going to be like 8 teams that are going to want to move up and get some of these quarterbacks.
So, and that's my whole point is you don't want to weaken your bargaining position. Even Garoppolo, if at this point he doesn't have to be the guy. He can be the guy that somebody else. He can be the guy that gets you the prize, and then you can go out and draft somebody from your backyard if you like Rosen or Darnold that much. I think it just gives them options. I really like the move, and I really believe that tanking was the right thing to do.
All right, Chicago and Cincinnati. Now, this is actually a game I'm thinking about for the money line. Right along the same thing, reason that you talked about Pittsburgh's Monday night situation hangover, potentially. Same reason. I mean, you got Burfict. You have Kirkpatrick. You've got Mixon with concussion, so they're not going to play. You got Adam Jones out with a groin possibly. You've got Williams dealing with a hamstring. You've got the physical game. And you lost the psychological feeling of we can't win the big game. That is short week. That's got to hurt the Bengals. They're a 6-point favorite. But, hey, look, if they come out and they are pissed off in a positive way, they're still a more talented team than the Bears, even with all these guys out, then maybe, with A.J. Green and Dalton, 2 quick touchdowns, and, they get off to a nice start, and they cruise, and they win, and they cover. But, look, Bears may not be a bad money line play, a little bit more than 2-1 odds.
Yeah, I just wish I would have seen more from that passing game last week. Especially since Chicago was one of my favorite plays. Very disappointing.
I hear you.
Especially with Cohen. I mean, Cohen opened the door. It was right there. All you
had
to do was shut it by being a little aggressive in your play calling, maybe trusting a guy like Wright more. I don't know. It was probably a game I'm going to stay away from because you're absolutely right on the Bengals and their emotional psyche.
And this is a team. This is the one team. We talk about Barkley for the Niners and all the teams for quarterbacks. This is the team that whoever that top receiver is, that's who the Bears need. So the Bears need, and if they don't pick a receiver in the first round, then they better be picking and go out in free agency and getting like 3 of them, because they've got to give Trubisky some weapons, because the kid.
Yeah, needs... I mean, not only did they come in with a depleted group into the season. And obviously hinging a lot on Kevin White, then injuries betrayed him. So, it's a tough spot.
Yeah, problem is there really isn't like a bona fide star receiver. There's some good ones. There always are, but there's no really guys that you go, oh yeah, the Bears are going to pick one in the first round. I don't see the Bears picking a first round guy where they are in the draft.
Do you know offhand who the top rated receiver is?
Yeah, you're probably looking at guys guys that are not big names. You're looking at
I like
Pettis.
Washington at Okie State.
Yeah,
I think
James Washington. Yeah, but then you got the problem of, come on, how many of those guys have come out of Oklahoma State and fizzled? Michael Gallup's a good player from Colorado State. See, the problem is you got guys like Michael Gallup from Colorado State. You got Dante Pettis from Washington. Maybe he's going to, after what happened with Ross, people are going to be, backing away. You've got the kid, Cortland Sutton from SMU. You got Christian Kirk. So you got good players.
A little drop issue for Cortland Sutton. But, I mean, look, Corey Davis was the top wide receiver last year. So to me, I think directional schools, it doesn't matter on receivers. It's just who steps up. And you're right, there's no clear-cut guy. To me, I think it's going to end up being Washington.
And I doubt he'd be a top 10 pick, but we'll see. Okay.
Right.
And then the Indianapolis-Buffalo game, nobody's going to see. And as you said, there's no line anyway. A lot of injuries. It looks like Taylor's going to play, though, because he was practicing today. So there is that. And look, hey, if Buffalo wins and they beat Miami the week after that at home, they get the Colts and the Dolphins back-to-back weeks. They could be 8-6. So.
Oh, yeah. By all means, now, what was looking to be 8-8 might get you 6. It no longer appears that way because I think the Chargers have gotten hot. The Ravens obviously have and got a favorable schedule to close. And same with these Bills that are going to stay in the fight. And obviously, if they have Taylor and not Peterman, they can be taken seriously.
All right. I know it's going to be a month before the playoffs in college football, but they're all kind of equal to each other. Do you have like a team that you're like, oh yeah, this is definitely the team I'm going with?
Absolutely not. Not one inclination. And I'm like that with bowls too. I'll look at it the week they're going to be played. From a future standpoint. At this point, who's my favorite of these four? I've seen Oklahoma fail too much, even though I'm a big believer in Mayfield on the college level, the pros. And then, I think I've seen enough from Clemson to really like them against Alabama, but, you never know with injuries and whatnot. And obviously it's going to end up a pick 'em anyway, so I don't have to make that decision until game day, given that the Tide opened as a 1-point favorite.
Okay. I'm actually, I've already decided that I'm definitely going with the Georgia. I haven't decided the winner, even though I'm leaning towards Georgia, but I am going with the Georgia-Oklahoma winner. That's what I'm doing. Whoever, and the fact that they're the third and fourth teams as far as the future lines, that's my strategy. If I'm going in blind, and I haven't used any money on my futures all season, that's what I'm doing. I'm taking both Georgia and Oklahoma money line to win the national championship, and as long as one wins, then I'm making some money. So
then you'll be getting points on that Monday night.
Yes, I would be. That is true too.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is going to wrap it up. By the way, condolences on Scott Frost. I must say that.
Yeah, I knew that was coming, and good for him. God bless him. He had a new kid, and I hope for the best. I pray for the Big Ten because they're not going to be able to handle him.
All right. Are you gonna start rooting for Nebraska a little bit?
I don't root for teams that aren't UCF, but I certainly will not frown when they win games 44-10, and I'll probably be on it a lot.
All right, sounds good. You're okay with the new coaching hire?
Yeah, I'm all right with it. I trust White, the RAD. He's been really spot on. Johnny Dawkins' hire has worked out in basketball, so
okay.
Got to give him the benefit of the doubt. And we'll see what Heupel as a first-year coach doesn't thrill me as much as the prospect of Randy Shannon recruiting Miami as well as he will. And then he knows a little thing or two about defense, even though he's got his detractors. But I think we can trust him to coordinate the defense.
All right, Tony. Enjoy the games this week. A lot of really good ones, and especially starting with the game tonight. And we will see you and talk to you next Thursday.
All right, sounds good, Rick.
Thanks, Tony. All right, that's Tony Mejia, and that is going to wrap it up here for our show today. By the way, don't forget to tune in tomorrow. We have our college football show. Yes, even though there's only the Army-Navy game, we will give our pick for the game, even though I already know who I'm picking. I said it 3 times this week. It's going to be Army. But we're also, I think we're going to hook up with Kevin Noon, who covers the Ohio State Buckeyes for BuckeyeGrove.com, get his take on the Ohio State Buckeyes win over Wisconsin and getting shut out of the playoffs. We have a couple of other interviews on demand from national writers earlier this week talking about the college football playoffs. So that's available at Ourlads.com. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. And thanks for tuning in here. Oh, and check us out on Sunday morning for our fantasy football coverage as well. So that's it. We'll see you next Thursday right here on OFN NFL Preview with Tony Mejia. And thanks for tuning in.